cafe smelled of fresh coffee and baked bread, the kind of warm, inviting aroma that made people forget about the cold November rain outside. It was just past noon, and the lunch rush was beginning to fill the small establishment with business people grabbing quick meals and students lingering over laptops. Ethan Bradford sat at his usual corner table, reviewing contracts on his tablet while eating a sandwich he barely tasted. At 36, he was the CEO of Bradford Financial Group, a company he had built from the ground up after his wife's death 5 years ago. Being a single father to his daughter Mia while running a growing financial services firm meant his life was a constant juggling act, but he had learned to make it work. He was absorbed in analyzing a merger proposal when movement at the counter caught his attention. A young woman stood there, holding a baby who couldn't have been more than 18 months old. The woman had blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wore a beige sweater that had seen better days, paired with a long skirt that looked handmade. She was thin, the kind of thin that suggested missed meals rather than intentional diet choices, but it was what she was trying to buy that made Ethan pause. "Just one slice of bread, please," the woman said to the barista, her voice barely above a whisper. She placed a crumpled dollar bill and some change on the counter. "And could I have a glass of water?" The barista, a young man who looked uncomfortable, glanced at the money. "Ma'am, we don't really sell bread by the slice. I could get you a small sandwich, or I only have enough for one slice." The woman interrupted, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "Please, my daughter hasn't eaten since last night." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. He looked at the baby in the woman's arms, a little girl with light hair and chubby cheeks who was clutching a small, stuffed bear. The child looked healthy enough, but he could see the worry in the mother's eyes, the desperation that came from not knowing how to feed your child. The barista was clearly torn between policy and compassion. "Let me ask my manager." "It's fine," Ethan said, standing and approaching the counter. "I'll buy her meal, whatever she wants." The woman spun to face him, startled and immediately defensive. "I don't need charity. I have money for bread." "I can see that," Ethan said gently. "But one slice of bread isn't a meal, especially when you're caring for a baby. Please, let me buy you both some real food. No strings, no expectations. Just one parent to another." The woman looked at him suspiciously, trying to assess his motives. Ethan understood her wariness. People didn't offer help without wanting something in return. That was the world's usual lesson. But he also saw the hunger in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held her daughter, and knew she was at the end of her resources. "I'm Ethan," he said, keeping his tone casual and non-threatening. "I have a daughter about your baby's age. I know how hard it can be to make sure they're fed and cared for. Please, just let me help. No conditions." The baby reached out toward Ethan, making a happy sound and displaying the kind of trust only small children possessed. The woman's resistance crumbled. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you. I'm Sophie. This is my daughter, Hannah. Nice to meet you both. Come sit at my table. Order whatever you and Hannah need." Sophie hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but the baby was getting fussy, and she was exhausted. She followed Ethan to his corner table while he asked the barista to bring menus. Once seated, Sophie looked overwhelmed by the menu's options. Ethan noticed she was looking at the cheapest items, trying to minimize the cost despite his offer to pay. "Sophie," Ethan said gently, "I meant it when I said order whatever you need. A sandwich, soup, something for Hannah. Don't worry about the price. I just don't want to take advantage," Sophie said, her voice tight with emotion. "You're not. I'm offering." "There's a difference." Sophie finally ordered a bowl of soup, a sandwich, and a small portion of macaroni and cheese for Hannah. When the food arrived, Ethan watched as she immediately focused on feeding Hannah first, carefully cooling the pasta and making sure her daughter ate, before taking even a bite of her own meal. It was such a maternal instinct. Such clear evidence of a mother's love that Ethan felt his eyes sting. He thought about his own late wife, Sarah, who had possessed that same fierce protectiveness toward Mia. Hannah ate happily, making happy sounds and occasionally offering bites of pasta to her mother and even to Ethan. In the generous way toddlers sometimes shared their food with people they liked. Only after Hannah had eaten most of her portion did Sophie turn to her own food. The way she ate, quickly but trying to maintain dignity, told Ethan this was the first real meal she'd had in days. "How old is Hannah?" Ethan asked, keeping the conversation light. 18 months. She'll be 2 in May. Sophie smiled at her daughter, and the love in her expression was unmistakable. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me. I have a 5-year-old daughter named Mia. She's at school right now, but she's my whole world. I understand that kind of love." Sophie took another bite of her sandwich, then seemed to decide that Ethan's kindness deserved honesty in return. "I'm not usually like this, begging for bread. I had a job and an apartment, but my landlord sold the building 3 months ago, and the new owner tripled the rent. I couldn't afford it. I've been couch surfing with friends, but everyone has their own problems. Last week, the friend I was staying with had a family emergency and needed me to leave. I've been staying at a shelter, but there's a 3-night limit, and I've used those 3 nights. What about Hannah's father?" Ethan asked carefully. "Not in the picture. He left when I got pregnant. I haven't heard from him since." Sophie's voice was matter-of-fact, like she had accepted this reality long ago. "It's just Hannah and me against the world." "Kind of work did you do?" "I was a receptionist at a dental office. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough when rent was reasonable. But the office closed last month when the dentist retired. I've been applying everywhere. It's hard to get hired when you don't have a permanent address and your phone keeps getting shut off because you can't pay the bill." Ethan listened, understanding how quickly life could unravel when you lacked a safety net. "Where are you staying tonight?" Sophie's face fell. "I don't know yet. The shelter won't take us back for another week. I was thinking maybe the bus station. At least it's warm and I can sit in the waiting area with Hannah until someone tells us to leave." "That's not safe," Ethan said firmly. "Bus stations aren't places for babies at night." "I know that," Sophie snapped, her exhaustion making her defensive. "But I'm out of options. Do you think I want to spend the night at a bus station with my daughter? I'm doing the best I can with what I have." "I know you are. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to judge. I just meant that there has to be a better solution." They ate in silence for a moment, Hannah contentedly playing with her stuffed bear, oblivious to her mother's stress. Ethan's mind was working through possibilities, weighing options and potential outcomes. "I have a proposal," he said finally. "My company owns an apartment building downtown. It's primarily for executives who are relocating, but we keep several units available for various purposes. You and Hannah could stay in one of those units temporarily while you get back on your feet. No rent, just a safe place to stay." Sophie stared at him, shocked. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "'Cause you need help and I'm in a position to provide it. Because I have a daughter and I can't imagine how terrifying it would be to not know where she would sleep tonight. Because helping others isn't conditional on knowing them. It's just the right thing to do." "What do you want in return?" Sophie asked, her voice hard with suspicion born from experience. "Nothing. No expectations, no conditions. Just a safe place for you and Hannah while you figure out your next steps." Ethan paused. "Sophie, I know you don't know me and you have no reason to trust me, but I promise you this is a genuine offer with no ulterior motives. I'm a single parent. I know how hard it is, and I have resources I don't need that could make a real difference in your life right now." Sophie looked at Hannah, who was starting to get tired, her little head drooping onto her mother's shoulder. Then she looked back at Ethan, trying to read his intentions. "Okay," she said finally, her voice breaking. Okay? Yes. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you for this. You don't need to repay me. Just focus on taking care of Hannah and rebuilding your life. That's payment enough. Ethan made a phone call to his property manager, arranging for immediate access to one of the vacant units. Then he drove Sophie and Hannah to the building, a modern complex in a safe neighborhood with good schools nearby. The apartment was modest but clean and fully furnished, with a small kitchen, living area, bedroom, and bathroom. To Sophie, walking in with Hannah in her arms, it must have looked like a palace. There's food in the pantry and fridge, Ethan explained. Basic supplies in the bathroom and bedroom. If you need anything else, here's my card with my direct number. And Sophie, I mean it, call if you need something. Diapers, formula, whatever Hannah needs. Sophie set Hannah down. And the toddler immediately began exploring the new space with the enthusiasm only small children possessed. Sophie turned to Ethan, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand why you're being so kind. People aren't kind like this. They don't help without wanting something. Some people are kind like this, Ethan said gently. You've just been surrounded by the wrong people. And Sophie, for what it's worth, I think you're an amazing mother. The way you made sure Hannah ate before you took a single bite. The way you've been trying to keep her safe and warm despite having nothing. That's the mark of real love and real strength. Hannah is lucky to have you. Sophie broke down completely, sobbing with relief and exhaustion and gratitude. Ethan gave her space, understanding she needed this release. When she composed herself, Ethan handed her a folder. This has information about local resources, job assistance programs, childcare options, food banks, everything you might need to get stable again. And Sophie, this apartment is yours for 3 months, no questions asked. That should give you enough time to find work and save for a deposit somewhere permanent. 3 months, Sophie whispered. I can work with 3 months. I can find a job, save money, get us back on our feet. I believe you can. And if you need help with the resume or job applications, my assistant is excellent at that kind of thing. Just let me know. Over the following weeks, Ethan checked in periodically to make sure Sophie and Hannah had what they needed. He learned more about Sophie's background, about her difficult childhood in foster care, about her determination to give Hannah a better start in life than she had received. Sophie, for her part, proved his faith in her was justified. Within 2 weeks, she had found a job as an administrative assistant at a medical clinic. The pay wasn't spectacular, but it was steady and came with benefits. She enrolled Hannah in an affordable daycare program and began saving every penny she could toward first and last month's rent somewhere. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after their initial meeting, Ethan brought Mia to visit. His daughter, a bright-eyed 5-year-old with her late mother's smile, was delighted to meet Hannah. The two girls played together while Sophie and Ethan talked. I wanted to thank you properly, Sophie said. What you did for us, it wasn't just giving us a place to stay. You gave me hope when I had none left. You showed me that good people still existed in the world. You would have figured something out even without me, Ethan said. You're resourceful and determined. I just made it a little easier. No, you saved us. I was at the absolute end of my rope that day. One more night on the streets or in an unsafe situation, and I don't know what would have happened. You saw someone in need and you helped without judgment or expectation. That's rare, Ethan. That's really rare. As the weeks turned into months, something unexpected happened. What had started as a charitable gesture evolved into genuine friendship. Ethan and Sophie discovered they had more in common than just single parenthood. They shared similar values, similar sense of humor, similar dreams for their daughters. Mia and Hannah became inseparable. And Sophie started joining Ethan for weekend outings to parks and museums. It felt natural and comfortable, as broken families finding wholeness in each other's company. 3 months after Sophie moved into the apartment, as her lease was coming to its agreed-upon end. She had saved enough for a security deposit and first month's rent at a small apartment across town. She was preparing to move when Ethan asked her to dinner. They sat at the same cafe where they had first met, though this time Sophie ordered confidently, no longer worried about whether she could afford a meal. "Need to talk to you about something," Ethan said, and Sophie's stomach dropped, thinking he was going to ask her to leave the apartment early. "I know the 3 months are up," Sophie said quickly. "I have a place lined up. I'll be out this weekend." "That's not what I wanted to talk about," Ethan said with a slight smile, "though I'm glad you found something." "Sophie, these past 3 months have been important to me. Having you and Hannah in my life has reminded me that family doesn't have to look traditional to be real. Mia adores Hannah, and honestly, she adores you too. She's been asking when you're coming over again, when we can go to the zoo together, when Hannah can have a sleepover." "Mia is wonderful," Sophie said, "and I'm grateful for your friendship. You've been so good to us." "Want to be more than friends," Ethan said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I mean, if you're interested. I know the timing might be weird, and I know there's a power imbalance because I helped you when you needed it. But Sophie, I've fallen for you. The way you love Hannah, your strength and determination, your kindness, even when you had nothing, all of it. I'd like to explore whether we could be more than just 2 single parents helping each other out." "Okay." Sophie stared at him, her eyes wide. "You want to date me? Romantically? If you're interested, yes. But if you're not, if this is too much or too soon or just not what you want, we can absolutely stay friends. I don't want to lose you and Hannah from our lives, regardless of whether this goes anywhere romantic." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she smiled, a genuine expression that lit up her whole face. "I've been half in love with you for weeks. I just didn't think someone like you would be interested in someone like me. I have baggage and a baby and no money. You're a CEO with a house and resources, and you could date anyone you wanted." "I want to date you," Ethan said firmly. "Not despite your circumstances, but because of who you are within those circumstances. You're amazing, Sophie. I'd be lucky if you gave me a chance." "Then yes," Sophie said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Let's give this a chance. Let's see if 2 broken families can make something whole together." Their relationship developed slowly and thoughtfully, both of them cautious about how their choices would affect Mia and Hannah. But it became clear quickly that the girls were thrilled to have their little friendship evolve into something more like sisterhood. A year after that first meeting in the cafe, Ethan proposed. They were married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends, with Mia as flower girl and Hannah as an enthusiastic, if unsteady ring bearer who needed her big sister's help to walk down the aisle in his vows. Ethan spoke about the day he saw Sophie trying to buy a single slice of bread, about how her fierce love for her daughter and her willingness to accept help when she needed it had taught him about strength and humility. "Came into the cafe that day with nothing but love for your daughter and desperation to feed her," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "And you taught me that the most important thing any of us can do is show up for each other. Help when we can, and remember that circumstances don't define worth. You've made me a better father, a better person, and a better man. Thank you for trusting me when you had every reason not to. Thank you for building this family with me. I love you." Sophie's vows were equally moving. "When you told me to sit down and eat first, you weren't just feeding my body. You were feeding my soul. You showed me kindness when I had forgotten it existed. You gave me shelter when I was homeless. You gave me hope when I had none. And most importantly, you loved my daughter like she was your own. That's the greatest gift anyone could give a mother. I love you, Ethan. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible." They built a life together that honored both their pasts and their hopes for the future. Sophie went back to school part-time, earning a degree in social work. She eventually started working for a nonprofit that helped homeless families, using her own experience to guide others through the system she had once navigated alone. Ethan continued running his company, but became increasingly involved in charitable work, particularly programs that helped single parents and families facing housing insecurity. He established a foundation in his late wife's name that provided emergency housing and job assistance to families in crisis. Mia and Hannah grew up as sisters in every way that mattered. Their bond forged in those early days of playground visits and shared meals. They called themselves the sisters who chose each other, and their friendship was a testament to what could be built when adults prioritized children's needs and built families on foundations of love rather than just biology. Years later, when Hannah was applying to college and writing essays about people who inspired her, she wrote about that day in the cafe. A day she couldn't actually remember, but had heard the story of countless times. My mother tried to buy one slice of bread because it was all she could afford and all she needed to feed me, Hannah wrote. A stranger saw us and said the words that changed our lives. Sit down. Eat first. Those simple words represented a philosophy that would shape our family. That you take care of people's immediate needs before worrying about anything else. That feeding someone's hunger, whether physical or emotional, is always the right first step. That kindness doesn't require knowing someone's whole story, just recognizing their humanity. The man who said those words became my father, and the lesson he taught that day, that we take care of each other first and work out details later, has guided every choice I've made since. Sophie kept a dollar bill and change she had tried to use to buy that slice of bread, framed in a shadow box with a photo from their wedding day. It hung in their home as a reminder of how far they had come and how much difference one moment of compassion could make. And Ethan kept a corner table at that cafe as his regular spot, though now he often brought his whole family there for weekend breakfasts. He watched for people who looked like they were counting change or ordering the cheapest items, and he quietly paid for their meals, asking the staff to simply tell them it had been taken care of. Pay it forward when you can, he would tell his daughters when they asked why he did it. Remember that we were once the family that needed help. Now we're the family that can provide it. That's not charity. That's responsibility. We help because we can, because someone needs it, and because none of us get through this life alone. It's the story of the poor woman who tried to buy a slice of bread, and the CEO who told her to sit down and eat first became part of their family legend, told and retold to grandchildren eventually. A reminder that sometimes the most important thing you can do is meet someone's immediate need without judgment or expectation, and that from those simple acts of human decency, entire lives can be transformed. Sophie never forgot what it felt like to stand at that counter with her last dollar, trying to buy bread for her daughter. And she never forgot the sound of Ethan's voice saying those transformative words. Sit down. Eat first became her own philosophy in her work helping others. A reminder that you address the crisis first, then you work on long-term solutions. But first, always first, you make sure people are fed, sheltered, safe. Everything else could wait. That was the gift Ethan had given her that day in the cafe. Not just food or shelter or even love, though all of those came too. He had given her the gift of being seen, of having her humanity recognized in a moment when she felt most invisible and desperate. And that gift rippled outward through everything she did for the rest of her life, touching countless others who needed someone to see them, feed them, and remind them that they mattered. All because one man saw a woman trying to buy a single slice of bread and chose compassion over convenience, action over indifference, and human connection over the easy option of looking away. If this story reminded you that addressing people's immediate needs without judgment is the foundation of real kindness, and that simple acts of seeing and feeding others can transform lives in ways we never imagined, Please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who has shown you compassion in difficult times, and subscribe to our channel for more stories about the power of practical kindness and meeting people where they are. Leave a comment below about a time when someone fed you, literally or metaphorically, when you needed it most, or when you had the opportunity to meet someone's immediate need before worrying about anything else. Your stories remind us all that sometimes the most profound thing we can do is simply say, sit down, eat first, and trust that everything else will work itself out from there.